This building is situated right in the heart of Amsterdam, close to the waterfront, and it is the Conservatorium van Amsterdam, and I work here. So for me this is a very familiar place, and we may have heard some instrumental sounds. They are not by Ensemble Variances and not belonging to pieces of mine, or Louis Andriessen or Thierry Pécou, but they are actually students of the Conservatorium van Amsterdam practicing. My professional life as a musician started at the Royal Conservatoire in The Hague. I studied classical percussion there, and during my studies there were a few, I would say, very influential things. First of all, it must have been in my second year, Olivier Messiaen came to the Conservatoire, and we rehearsed, I think, for some 2 months, his Turangalila Symphony. That was definitely something which made a big impression on me. A second visitor was John Cage. I think he came in my 4th year at the Conservatoire, and his conceptual way of going at things, going at composition, his aesthetics really rang a bell with me. Someone who came to the Conservatoire after I left, but I was still very much inspired by, I would say, is Steve Reich. We performed a lot of his music within the school, and since I graduated, Steve Reich has been one of the people I've been very involved with. I've programmed the World Minimal Music Festival here in Amsterdam for the Muziekgebouw in het IJ for a number of years. And I would say those 3 people, how different can they be? Yeah? John Cage, this very conceptual and highly aesthetic composer. Olivier Messiaen, whose harmonic language I find extremely beautiful and inspiring. And Steve Reich, who has a very sensual kind of, who writes a very sensual kind of minimalism, very melodic, very warm and embracing. So those 3 musical spirits have definitely made an imprint on my musical personality, I would say. Yeah, composing, in a way, I've always done. As a teenager, I played the flute, and I played percussion. I played drums in a band with a number of friends and my brother. And I was always making little things, songs for the band and little things for the flute, but I was never completely happy, obviously. I was just starting that activity, and then I went to Conservatoire and I put it aside a bit. I've made a slow crossfade, I would say, from performance to composing. Performance hasn't completely disappeared. I still perform, mostly pieces I create with other people, so pieces that are not notated. So it hasn't completely disappeared, but I would say that in a way, composing pieces has taken up most of the space that previously performing other people's music did. I would say that also those years I spent with the flute in my teenage years have made a big imprint, in that when you play the flute you breathe in, you breathe out, you make long phrases. As a percussionist you make impulses. So I think those 2 very different kinds of ways of making music both have had their influence on my composition, but also the fact that I have absorbed so many scores by other people. Thierry Pécou of Ensemble Variances knows all about being a composer but also performing, and I think it is a very healthy thing. For me it has been and is a healthy thing to perform and to learn other people's scores. You learn how music can work very much from the inside. It's also very pleasant to be on a stage, and it's also very pleasant to know what it is to be on a stage, what it is like. So when you write for other people, you know what it feels like, how processes work, etc. And it's of course a great place to be, a concert stage, I still feel. Well, I think that there is sometimes the discussion, is John Cage a minimalist? Well, he is not, but of course he knows all about limiting yourself and finding the backbone of an idea, etc. So in that perspective, you could say there is minimalist thinking in John Cage's brain. Steve Reich is a minimalist. Well, Olivier Messiaen is not a minimalist. He is a maximalist in a way. And so there are definitely conflicting aspects in my musical brain, but I think that's healthy. So there is definitely a very strong influence of minimalism in my work. In some works stronger than in others, obviously. So I always feel that when you set out a course for a piece, the piece to a certain extent writes itself. Having written Mestre Claudinei and knowing that that piece would be played in the Ensemble Variances concert, I thought for the new piece, well, let's have a look at other kinds of music from around the world which may be suitable for applying a similar kind of working process. So I looked around and quite soon I found music from Chile. Two kinds of music from Chile, one slightly ritual and the other music more dance-like. And I thought about it for a bit and I listened to it and I did some experimentation, and then I felt it was actually, I thought it might work. So I took this music, 20 minutes of music from Chile, actually music with a long history, a history of the period when the Spanish came to Chile, and there was an amalgam of the Spanish music and the music that was already there, the Indian music, and so this music has sort of survived the centuries and developed most certainly throughout those a couple of centuries, and this music is still performed in Chile. And once again I took that as a mold and I started working on top of that mold, and once again pulling out the original music, I kept working on the piece, but there is still some of the spirit of that original music from Chile in the piece, which is called Métis. So that title refers to the fact that different kinds of influences and backgrounds come together, which is certainly the case in this piece.